Now in these last two lessons, we're going to really delve into 3D in Photoshop to really create a really involved 3D text effect. In fact, this is another Hollywood-inspired text effect, something I saw a long time ago for a movie called Tomb Raider, and it always struck me whenever I'd see the poster that the 3D text was had a very cool, metallic, very sharp look to it. And you can actually achieve something very close to this in Photoshop now. And that's what we're going to do in these next couple lessons. So, we need to begin with the text, and what I discovered is to get the elements I'm looking for, I'm going to have to use a little bit of Illustrator features to get there. So I have an Illustrator document here with the text already in place, and a lot of it already fused together. But what I need is actually another element or another version of this text inset just a little bit to be another inner shape inside of this 3D shape. And unfortunately, Photoshop cannot do this, but Illustrator can do it quite easily. I'm just going to select this entire object and go under the Object menu, go here to Path, and choose Offset Path. And inside here, we're going to set it to negative 0.04, as you see right here. If I click on Preview, you can see it generates a new path instead of there, and it's proportional inside of there. So it actually looks really good. So go ahead and click OK, and now I've got those two separate shape elements. So we're going to take this entire object now, and that's all we're going to do in Illustrator. That's all I had to do was just create that inset path. So we're going to select the entire object, go ahead and copy it to the clipboard, and let's go ahead and bring it over here into Photoshop. So I'm going to go into the Edit menu again, go to Paste, and coming from Illustrator, it's going to ask us how we want to paste it into Photoshop as a smart object, pixels, path, or a shape layer. I'm going to go ahead and do it as a path, and go ahead and click OK. So it shows up in my paths, there it is right there, and it is a little smaller than I like it to be, so let's go ahead and scale it up right about there. And now what I want to do is to get the overall shape of it, I'm going to run a distort before I actually apply this as a 3D object. So we're going to the Edit menu, go in here and Transform Path, Warp, and then we're in the Warp menu up here in the Options bar, I'm going to choose this setting right here for Arc Lower. And it arcs it lower by default, but I'm going to grab this control handle at the bottom for the Warp tool and just click and drag up and give it a bend upward. And it's obviously distorting it like crazy, so I'm going to go back into that Edit menu and go to Transform Path again, and this time choose Scale. And I'm going to disproportionately scale this. It is a vector shape, so I'm not worried about the quality. So I'm just going to hold hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt on Windows. Don't hold down the Shift key, and just scale this just about like this. There we go. So now it's looking like the original title. Now we're ready to go in and to take it into 3D. But before we do that, remember, we've got these two elements. We've got the inset path and the original path. Well, I need those to be two separate elements to create my two 3D objects. So I'm going to select the inner path. I'm just holding down the Shift key as I click on each inner path to select it. Go ahead and copy that, and then go ahead and hit Delete. Gets rid of it on that layer. And let's go ahead and save this one path here. We'll call this the outer path. Go ahead and create a new path layer and paste that other path in there, and we'll go ahead and name this inner path. So we've got the outer path and the inner path ready to go ahead and generate our 3D elements. So back in the layers panel, let's go ahead and create a new blank layer and give this a color fill. I'm going to have this one element be this kind of yellowish color here. So again, we're going to go use the path. We're going to use the outer path, and let's go ahead and select that path. We're on the layer containing the yellow fill. Go to 3D, Repoussé, Selected Path. And it's going to go ahead and apply an extrusion to that text. And one thing, we're going to have to do a little bit of troubleshooting on this element here once it is created. So there, it's gone ahead and created the 3D. Notice it did not punch out the hole in the A and the D here. So we need to make that adjustment there. But actually, let's rotate this so we can see that the extrusion is a bit much, a little more than I want it to be. So let's go into the extrude settings here inside the Repoussé panel. And in the depth setting, we're going to set this to 0.3. So it's giving me a little bit shorter depth on the text there. Click in the home position to bring it back to its original spot. And let's take care of those holes in there. Down here in the internal constraints section, I'm going to go ahead and just select any one of these tools. And if I hover over those holes, you can see that they are there. It's highlighting them. They just didn't punch them out automatically. So we'll go ahead and click and select this one. And back inside the internal constraint section, we're going to go in this type menu and change it from inactive to whole. And it should go ahead and punch that area out. There you go. Go ahead and select the next one, and we'll go ahead and punch that area out as well. And we're looking pretty good. Now, before I click OK here in the Repoussé panel, I'm going to go ahead and, in the bevel, apply a very small bevel to this text. I'm going to put a 1 for the height and the width. Maybe you can go a little bit higher than that. Let's try 2 for the height and the width there. Not too bad. Actually, let's take the height back to 1. There we go. It's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK on that. So we've got that element built. Now you'll notice the yellow color was applied to the front face of this text, but not the extruded sides. So we can go ahead and do that manually here in the Layers panel. Notice we've got the sublayers for the layer itself, the front face, and then the Layer 1 extrusion. So if I double-click on that and open up that file, just like a smart object, and I've already still got that yellow color as my foreground color, so I'm going to press Option-Delete, fills that layer in, close it, save the changes, and it should update right there on the art. There we go. So now let's go back to our paths, and now we're going to create a layer based on that inner path. So again, we'll create a new blank layer. This time I'm just going to go ahead and give it a base gray fill, because this is going to take on a chrome look when we ultimately get to our finished art here. So, gray filled layer. We've got the path. We want to make sure we've got the inner path selected. We'll go ahead and drag and select the entire path. Once again, 3D, Repoussé, selected path. And it's going to do the exact same thing and apply the extrusion and go ahead and open up the Repoussé panel. Once again, we've got the extrusion here we need to adjust, so I'm going to go ahead and take this one to 0.2. We could probably get away with a shorter one because we're actually going to embed that inside the original text there. So we'll set that to 0.1. Put it back in the whole position, and we've got to go ahead and take care of those internal constraints. So we'll just select those shapes once again, set it to whole. Let it punch that area out. Looking good. Set it to whole once again. And it punches it out. Very nice. And once again, we're going to go ahead and add a bevel on this. I'm just going to go ahead and set it to 1 for each, the height and the width in this case, since we've got some really narrow areas in the certain parts of the letters. And that looks pretty good. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now we've got both of our text elements, the inner and outer shapes created, but they're still two separate 3D layers. If I grab my 3D tool and rotate this around, you can see there it is. And they're still two separate elements. I need them to be one 3D element, but still be able to manipulate those individual 3D pieces. So we need to merge these 3D layers together. Now, at this point, I would definitely recommend you do one very, very important thing. Because you've gotten this far, the last thing you want to do is crash and lose everything you've done up to this point. So definitely go over here and do a file, save as, and let's go ahead and save this so we don't lose anything. Because I have had Photoshop crash on me a number of times working with 3D. It's a very, very processor-intensive feature, so you want to be careful with that. So now let's go ahead and select both layers, go to 3D, merge 3D layers. So it's going to merge those together, because what we want is that chrome layer, or that gray layer, to just protrude forward just a little bit out of that text. So it looks like it's disappeared, but it's actually sitting inside of this yellow text. So we're going to go open up the 3D panel, and inside here we're going to go into the second tab at the top here, which is the mesh section. And I'm just going to go down here, and we're going to use the 3D mesh pan, or rather the 3D mesh slide tool right here. And we want to make sure we're on the right layer. So layer 1 is the yellow, and the gray one is actually layer 2. Now, because we can't see it, we can't actually select it or use the content-sensitive selection to grab it. So we're just going to move out our cursor to the outside of the document here, and then just click and drag down. And that brings that element forward. Now, we don't want to bring it too far forward. If I rotate this around, you can see it's protruding out of the text pretty nicely. In fact, it's probably out a little too far, so let's actually take that 3D tool once again. Again, the 3D Mesh Slide tool, and just push it back slightly. There we go. You want to be careful that you don't shift it too much. Shifting around these 3D objects can get a little tricky sometimes. Okay, there we go. So that's looking pretty good there. So again, back to the home position. So we've gotten pretty far. We've got all the 3D elements created and all of them merged together, and we've got the gray area protruding out just a little bit. What I am going to do is go ahead and just tilt the whole thing up just a little bit. So using the regular, or the master, I like to call it the master 3D object rotate tool instead of the mesh tool. I'm going to grab that and just hold down the shift key and just drag up a little bit just to give us a little bit of a downward angle on this text so we can see some of the bottom of the 3D text here. We'll just angle that up just a little bit. Right about there. Looks pretty good. All right. So we've gotten this far. In the next video, we're going to go ahead and add some surface properties to this text to make it a much more metallic look, to give it an overall finished look. So check in on there, and we'll go ahead and finish up this cool 3D text.